The laughter hit before the cake did. My name is Nora Whitfield, 31 years old, newly graduated from Portland Community College after 6 years of night classes and early morning shifts at the credit union. I'm the kind of woman people call dependable, steady voice, neat handwriting, always the one who remembers to bring napkins. Tonight, under the yellow backyard lights at my brother's house, that reliability felt like a costume I could no longer breathe in. The air smelled of charcoal and sweet corn. My family filled the long wooden table, voices rising and falling with the rhythm of shared stories. The cake sat at the center, white frosting, blue letters spelling, "Congrats." Nora. My mother had insisted we use paper plates to keep things casual. I didn't mind. I was just happy everyone showed up. Then my 10-year-old nephew, Levi, leaned across the table, eyes glinting with the same mischief I used to mistake for charm. "Hey, Aunt Nora," he said, voice high and confident. Before I could answer, he shoved the cake with both hands. It slid, wobbled, then crashed to the patio. Frosting spattered my shoes like white mud. "Eat it off the ground! Aunt Nora!" he shouted. The table erupted. My brother laughed first, loud and unashamed. My mother followed, covering her mouth but not her delight. I stood there holding the silver knife, the scent of burnt sugar rising around me, the sound of their laughter sharp as glass. I set the knife down gently, careful not to make a sound. My hands were steady, though my chest wasn't. Without a word, I untied the apron, stepped over the frosting, and walked toward the gate. Behind me, the laughter kept going, bright and endless, as if nothing had fallen at all. Rain followed me all the way down Burnside, the kind that didn't pour but whispered thin, endless threads brushing against the windshield. Portland's skyline blurred behind the wipers, a smear of gold and gray. I kept both hands on the steering wheel, trying not to think, trying not to feel the frosting still drying on my shoes. By the time I pulled into the parking lot behind my building, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A new message in the family group chat. The words glowed through the dim light of the car. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." The sender's name, Mom. For a moment, I thought it had to be a mistake. Then a small heart icon appeared beneath it. My brother's reaction. The kind of casual cruelty you can send with one tap. I turned off the engine. The quiet that followed felt heavier than the rain. Upstairs, the apartment was dark except for the city glow leaking through the blinds. I hung my jacket, kicked off my shoes, and sank into the couch without turning on the lights. My breath came slow, steady, no tears, no yelling, just the weight of something breaking without a sound. On the kitchen counter, the little ceramic owl my coworker, Maya, had given me for graduation watched with blank eyes. "You did it," she'd said earlier that week, hugging me outside the credit union. "You really did it." Nora. Funny how triumph and exile could share the same day. I picked up my phone again, opened the message, reread it until the words stopped meaning anything. The chat was silent now, no follow-up, no explanation. I placed the phone face down. Outside, the rain softened, as if even the weather had grown tired of speaking. For the first time, I wasn't sure whether I felt empty or finally at peace. Morning came pale and watery, the kind of Portland light that never quite decides whether it wants to stay. I sat at my small kitchen table, the same one I'd bought secondhand when I moved here, and opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, glowing against the gray morning. Rows of numbers filled the spreadsheet: rent, groceries, utilities, gas. And then the two lines I always scrolled past too quickly. Parents' mortgage $430. Brother's SUV loan $640. Both payments withdrawn automatically every month, always on time, always from my account. I stared at the numbers as if they belonged to someone else. My hand found the mug beside me. Coffee gone cold. 3 years ago, when Mom had called crying about the bank, I'd said yes before she even finished her sentence. "You're the responsible one, honey," she'd told me, her voice trembling but proud. "We just need a cosigner until your brother's business gets steady." I'd signed the papers in the living room of their old house, the walls smelling of lemon polish and gilt. At first, it felt good being the one who could help, proof that all those years of saving and working had meant something, but good things, when left unpaid, turn into something else. I scrolled through the history 36 months, every payment sent, every promise broken, nearly $38,000 of silent sacrifice. A different kind of heat rose in me, not anger, not grief, just clarity. I opened a new document. My fingers hesitated above the keyboard, then began to type slowly, one deliberate word at a time, removing my name from every loan tomorrow. I read the sentence twice, then saved the file. The click of the key sounded final, almost ceremonial. Outside, the rain had stopped, and sunlight touched the edges of the window pane. I closed the laptop and sat still, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the quiet rhythm of my own breathing. For the first time, I could feel something breaking that wasn't me. The next morning, the sky hung low and pale, the kind of Portland gray that made everything feel slower. I left early for work, the air smelling faintly of wet pine and asphalt. The credit union opened at 8, but I wasn't there for my shift. I was there as a client. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed softly over rows of quiet cubicles. At the far end, behind a desk lined with neat stacks of folders, sat Mr. Diaz, mid-50s, wire-rimmed glasses, kind eyes that had seen every kind of borrower. I'd trained under him years ago, back when I still believed good behavior guaranteed good outcomes. "Nora," he said, standing to shake my hand. "It's been a while." I sat across from him, my bag heavy with papers, lease agreement, pay stubs, old email threads. He looked through each page carefully, nodding slowly. "So you co-signed on 2 loans?" he asked. I nodded. "My parents' mortgage and my brother's SUV. I've been covering both for 3 years. I just want out." He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "You're not the first person to be taken advantage of under the word family." His voice was gentle but deliberate. "Once we file the release request, they'll be notified. Be ready for anger. The minute you stop paying, you stop existing in their story." I met his eyes. Then it's time I became the author of my own. He smiled faintly, sliding a stack of forms toward me. "Read, sign, initial." Each signature felt like cutting a thread I hadn't realized was choking me. The pen moved steadily, the sound of ink against paper crisp and final. When he stamped the last page, the soft thud echoed through the small office like a heartbeat. That night, back home, I poured a cup of mint tea and sat by the window. The city glowed faintly beneath the drizzle. I whispered into the quiet, steady and sure. This time, they'll feel the absence. By morning, the world had already started to shake. It began with a single notification, family chat new message, then another, and another. The numbers climbed before I even opened them. The first one was from Mom. "You're destroying this family." The next came from my brother. "You'll regret this when the bank repossesses everything." Then more followed pleas, accusations, long paragraphs typed in fury. None of them said thank you for 3 years of payments. Not one. At work, the phone buzzed through meetings, through lunch, through the quiet hours when clients trickled in to deposit paychecks. Maya noticed, glancing toward my desk. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. I smiled, the kind of smile you give when the truth would take too long to explain. Just family stuff. By late afternoon, the calls had turned into voicemails, my mother's voice cracked with practiced sorrow. "After all we've done for you, Nora, how could you embarrass us like this?" Then my brother, sharp and cold. "You've always thought you were better than us. Let's see how you do without family now." The phone kept ringing until I turned it face down on the desk. The hum of the air conditioner drowned out the sound. When my shift ended, the rain had started again, thin and steady. I walked home beneath its rhythm, letting it soak into my jacket, the cold air clearing what was left of the noise inside me. Upstairs, I made soup, ate slowly, and didn't check my phone. The city hummed outside, buses sighing through puddles, neighbors' footsteps fading down the hall. I washed the dishes, turned off the lights, and crawled into bed, for the first time in months. Maybe years. I fell asleep without running through numbers or rehearsing apologies. The phone buzzed once more on the nightstand, then went quiet. Rain tapped against the window, gentle and constant, as if the world itself was clapping softly for my decision to finally stop answering. 3 days passed before the knocking began. At first, it was just a few sharp raps against the wood, impatient but controlled. Then the sound grew louder, faster, until each pound vibrated through the small apartment like a heartbeat gone wrong. I froze in the middle of the kitchen, the knife I had been using to slice bread still in my hand. The noise came again. Bang! 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 Nora, my mother's voice, shrill and unsteady. Open this door right now. I set the knife down and stepped closer, peering through the peephole. My mother stood in the hallway, her coat still half-buttoned, hair wet from the rain. Beside her was my brother, red-faced, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. "We need to talk," he shouted. "You're ruining everything." The bank froze the account. My chest tightened. I hadn't expected them to come here, not really. Words were one thing. Presence was another. I backed away from the door, my palms damp. They kept pounding, voices overlapping in a storm of accusation. Ungrateful, selfish. Family doesn't turn on family. For a moment, I felt the familiar tremor of guilt rise up, the same one that had made me say yes to every favor, every loan, every apology I never received. My hand reached toward the doorknob, shaking. Then I remembered the frosting sliding across my shoes, the laughter that had followed. I picked up my phone, pressed record, and then dialed. "Seattle Police Department," the dispatcher answered. "Yes," I whispered, voice steady now. "2 individuals are outside my apartment yelling and refusing to leave. They're my family, but I've asked them not to come." Within minutes, the sirens came faint but clear through the rain. The pounding stopped. Then the flashing red and blue lights painted the hallway in color. When the officers arrived, my mother rushed toward them, pointing at my door. "She's my daughter," she cried. The male officer's voice was calm. "And this is her home." "Ma'am." Silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of the rain outside. My brother muttered something I couldn't hear. The officers guided them toward the stairwell. I kept the phone recording until their voices faded completely, then saved the file under a single word, boundaries. Date April 17th. By the next morning, the war had moved online. I saw it before I even had my first sip of coffee, a post from my mother. Her profile picture the same smiling portrait from my high school graduation. Sometimes the child you trust most betrays you the worst. My ungrateful daughter ruined our credit and left us drowning in debt. Underneath, the comments multiplied like sparks from a match. Poor Linda. After all she's done for that girl. Some children only know how to take. Family like that doesn't deserve forgiveness. Old neighbors, distant relatives, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, all adding their names to the fire. I scrolled slowly, the words blurring together until they stopped meaning anything. At first, my chest felt tight, as if all the oxygen had been pulled from the room. Then, just as quickly, something steadied inside me. I closed the app, exhaled, and walked to my desk. At the credit union, I drafted a short internal email. My fingers didn't shake. "Hi, team. If you happen to see rumors about me online, please ignore them. Some people fight boundaries with lies. I'm okay, and I appreciate your professionalism and privacy. Nora Whitfield." I read it once, deleted 2 unnecessary commas, then pressed send. 10 minutes later, a reply appeared from my manager. "Elise, take tomorrow off. Nora, proud of how you're handling this." That simple message loosened something in my throat. I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding, still trying not to break, not to react. The rest of the day unfolded quietly. No one at work mentioned the post. Maya left a cup of tea on my desk without saying a word. The warmth seeped into my palms, soft and steady. When I got home that evening, I didn't check my phone again. The apartment was dark except for the amber glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. Outside, someone laughed, far away and harmless. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, watching the city shimmer under the drizzle. The noise on the internet kept burning somewhere out there, but inside my walls, there was only calm. A week passed before the envelope arrived. It was thin, cream-colored, stamped with the green emblem of Green First Bank in the corner. For a moment, I just stared at it lying on the doormat, the paper catching a slant of afternoon light. My hands hesitated before I picked it up. The weight felt ordinary, nothing like what it carried. I sat at the table and slid a finger beneath the seal. The letter unfolded neatly, the paper smooth beneath my palms. And there it was printed in calm, formal lines. This document confirms that Nora Whitfield has been fully released from all liabilities related to the joint mortgage and vehicle loan under the names of Linda and Ryan Whitfield. At the bottom, a gold seal shimmered against the page, embossed with the bank's crest. The paper trembled slightly in my hands, not from fear, but from something quieter, almost disbelief. For 3 years, I'd paid, waited, justified, endured, and now, with one piece of paper, it was over. I leaned back in my chair. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. My eyes drifted toward the window where the rain streaked faint silver lines against the glass. The sound reminded me of that night, the smashed cake, the knife, the laughter that cut sharper than any blade. For a moment, the images overlapped frosting on my shoes. My mother's message, the officer's calm voice in the hallway, the soft click of Mr. Diaz's pen. Every humiliation, every signature, every quiet decision led here to this stillness. I folded the letter carefully along its crease and slipped it into a simple black frame. Then I placed it above my desk, beside a postcard of the Oregon coast. When I stepped back, the gold seal caught the light again, bright and certain. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't triumph. It was something pure justice. Notarized. The months that followed moved quietly, like water finding its path. The noise faded the messages, the comments, the guilt that had once filled every corner of my days. What replaced them wasn't emptiness, but space, wide and breathable. At the credit union, my work began to shift in small, unexpected ways. Clients came in with the same stories I used to live, parents asking for signatures, siblings borrowing just for a while, promises dressed as duty. I listened, patient and steady, guiding them through terms, clauses, and fine print. My voice surprised me. It carried a calm authority I hadn't known I possessed. Elise, my manager, noticed. One afternoon after a meeting, she stopped by my desk, resting a hand on the divider. "You've become someone people trust," she said. "There's a steadiness in you now." A week later, she called me into her office and offered me a promotion, not grand, just a modest step forward, but earned on my own terms. The rhythm of my life settled into something simple. Mornings began with yoga in the corner of my living room. The mat rolled out beside the window where sunlight touched the wood floors. Weekends meant cooking real meals, not the frozen dinners I used to eat while balancing budgets. I found friends who didn't treat closeness like a transaction. We shared food, laughter, quiet. No one kept score. One evening, an email popped into my inbox. The subject line read, "Training Example Approval." It was from Mr. Diaz. "Hi, Nora. We've started using your case as a teaching example for boundary protection during client workshops. Your story reminds people that self-respect is part of financial health." I read it twice, smiling softly. The very thing that once felt like shame had turned into instruction. The scars had learned how to speak, how to teach without bitterness. Outside, Portland's evening light stretched long and golden across the buildings. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and listened to the steady rhythm of rain beginning again, a familiar sound, no longer heavy, just honest. Almost a year passed before his name appeared on my screen again. The city was quiet that morning, the kind of stillness Portland only gives after long rain. I had just finished watering the fern by the window when my phone buzzed softly on the counter. It was a message from my brother. "I'm sorry for everything. No excuses, no explanations, just 6 words that hovered between us like fragile glass." I stared at the screen for a moment, waiting for the familiar rush anger, sadness, vindication. But none came. There was only calm, steady, and whole, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. I set the phone down and turned toward the kitchen. The mixing bowl gleamed under the soft light. Without really thinking, I began to gather ingredients: flour, sugar, lemons. The scent of zest filled the room, bright and sharp. When the cake came out of the oven, golden and warm, I spread the frosting slowly, the same pale white I remembered from that night a lifetime ago. On the counter sat the old silver knife I had kept despite everything. I cut one slice, placed it carefully on a ceramic plate, and waited for it to cool. The plate stayed whole this time, steady, unshaken. I sat by the window with my fork, listening to the rain tapping against the glass. Outside, the streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, turning the world into ribbons of silver. I took a small bite, sweet and tart, and let the quiet settle around me. The phone was still on the counter, unread, untouched. I didn't need to reply. Peace had arrived, not as an apology, but as something I'd baked for myself served whole, at last.